Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
In the highlands of Ethiopia, where incense curls in ancient stone churches and chants echo across centuries-old monasteries, a quiet resistance was once staged. This was not a war of swords and sieges, but of theology, culture, and influence, a hidden war. It was a battle for spiritual sovereignty, fought not on battlefields, but through papal bulls, imperial edicts, and clandestine conversions. On one side stood the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, proud of its apostolic roots and ancient traditions. On the other stood the Roman Catholic Church, claiming universal authority over Christendom and seeking to integrate the Christian East under the Latin West. Though the Vatican's ambitions in Ethiopia may seem like a footnote in the grand sweep of church history, the Ethiopian Church's resistance was anything but insignificant. At stake was more than religious belief. It was national identity, sovereignty, and the right to interpret Christ through an African lens. Christianity in Ethiopia predates much of Europe's conversion. By the 4th century CE, under the reign of King Ezana of Aksum, Ethiopia had become one of the earliest nations in the world to adopt Christianity as the state religion. This was centuries before most of Europe, including the heart of modern-day Catholicism, Rome, became officially Christianized. The Ethiopian Church was born in the Eastern Christian tradition and was deeply influenced by the Alexandrian Church in Egypt. For centuries, the Ethiopian Church was administratively dependent on the Coptic Orthodox Church of Alexandria, whose patriarch appointed the Abuna, head bishop of Ethiopia. However, Ethiopia's geographical isolation due to Muslim conquests in North Africa and its unique Judaic-Christian traditions gave rise to a distinct form of Christianity. It held fast to ancient liturgies in Guizi, honored the Ark of the Covenant in every church, and revered the Keber Nagast, a national epic intertwining biblical lore with Ethiopian monarchy. When Latin Christianity under the papacy began to expand beyond Europe, Ethiopia was not seen as a brother in faith but rather as an exotic anomaly to be aligned or corrected. By the 16th century, the Catholic Reformation gave rise to aggressive missionary activities across the globe. The Society of Jesus, commonly known as the Jesuits, spearheaded efforts to bring the true faith to distant lands. Ethiopia, with its long-standing but unorthodox Christianity, was a prime target. The arrival of Portuguese Jesuits in the early 1500s marked the beginning of a theological siege. Initially, relations were cordial. Portugal had aided Ethiopia militarily against Muslim invasions led by Ahmed Grag, and a sense of gratitude opened the door to religious dialogue. However, what followed was a systematic effort to supplant Ethiopian orthodoxy with Roman Catholic doctrine. One of the most notable and controversial episodes occurred under Emperor Susenyos r. 1606 to 1632, who, influenced by Jesuit missionaries such as Pedro Paz and later Afonso Mendes, appointed Catholic Patriarch of Ethiopia by the Pope, declared Catholicism the state religion in 1622. This sparked widespread rebellion. The Catholic liturgy was alien. The Latin doctrines on the nature of Christ, particularly the rejection of Miaphysitism, were considered heretical, and the aggressive condemnation of local practices, such as Sabbath observance and dietary laws, provoked outrage. In a dramatic turn, Susenyos abdicated in favor of his son Fasilides in 1632. One of Fasilides' first acts was to expel the Jesuits and sever ties with the Vatican. He restored Ethiopian orthodoxy and issued a royal edict barring Catholics from entering Ethiopia under penalty of death. The nation turned inward, launching over 2 centuries of near-total isolation from Europe. At the heart of the schism lay Christology. The Ethiopian Church adheres to Miaphysitism, a doctrine that holds that in the person of Jesus Christ, divinity and humanity are united in one nature, miaphysis, without separation, confusion, or change. This belief diverged from the Chalcedonian definition, 451 CE, which declared that Christ has 2 distinct natures, divine and human, in one person. The Council of Chalcedon led to the alienation of several Eastern Christian communities, including the Copts, Syrians, Armenians, and Ethiopians. Rome and Byzantium considered Miaphysitism heretical, a view the Vatican maintained well into the modern period. Attempts by Catholic missionaries to impose the Chalcedonian formula on the Ethiopian Church were seen not as ecumenical dialogue but as theological colonization. Catholicism's Latin rites, unfamiliar saints, and alien traditions clashed with Ethiopia's rich spiritual heritage. The Ethiopian liturgical calendar, its fasts, chants, and even church architecture reflected a Christianity that had evolved organically, steeped in African soil and Semitic traditions. To accept Roman Catholicism was to surrender not just a theology, but a worldview. Moreover, the Ethiopian monarchy saw the Vatican's overtures as imperial meddling. Rome did not just seek communion, it sought obedience. The appointment of Latin bishops, the use of Latin over Guizi, and the rejection of local customs made it clear that the Vatican's aim was not unity but assimilation. The imperial court, the monastic establishment, and the wider populace all saw Catholicism as a foreign intrusion. The Jesuits' presence became synonymous with political interference, and their expulsion was as much a nationalistic act as it was religious. Though the 19th and 20th centuries brought new waves of Catholic missionary activity, including the establishment of a small Ethiopian Catholic Church in communion with Rome, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church remained the spiritual heart of the nation. The Catholic population remained a minority, and the Orthodox Church retained deep popular legitimacy. The Vatican eventually shifted its strategy from confrontation to dialogue. In the 20th century, particularly after the Second Vatican Council, 1962 to 1965, efforts were made to bridge doctrinal divides and promote mutual respect. Ecumenical talks acknowledged the ancient legitimacy of the Ethiopian Church and reframed theological differences in more conciliatory terms. In recent decades, high-profile meetings between Ethiopian patriarchs and popes, including Pope John Paul II and Pope Francis, have symbolized a new era of respect, though full communion remains elusive. The story of the hidden war between the Ethiopian Church and the Vatican is not merely a tale of theological squabbling. It is a testament to the resilience of a Christian tradition that refused to be subsumed under foreign authority. It is a chronicle of a church that, though ancient and isolated, stood firm in the face of Latin pressure, preserving its identity across centuries of both conflict and contact. Today, the scars of that hidden war still inform relations between Rome and Addis Ababa. Yet in that shared Christian heritage, one born in Jerusalem and expressed in both Latin and Guizi, there remains the hope of understanding, not conquest.